As I started thinking about the purpose of this talk, focusing on what's going on with COVID and the PPP program, the biggest challenge that we have right now really is understanding the long game, basically seeing the forest for the trees. So what better place than an actual forest to have this conversation? I'm sorry for that pun, but you all have to sit with it, so it is what it is. The disruption that everyone is feeling right now is painful, but it's also an area of massive opportunity for everyone, because all of the accounts that your commercial sales reps that are calling into different businesses in your service area, all of them have been hurt in some way. Now, some of them are being hurt in very interesting ways. If they're a home services company, they suddenly have an influx of orders and work, but they can't find workers right now because we find ourselves in a real odd situation of high unemployment and at the same time a challenge in finding labor. So with that, you have a lot of business owners that are feeling very uncomfortable right now. And it's in that lack of comfort that I think you're going to find an opportunity to connect with them. So where is that opportunity ultimately going to spring from? It's going to spring from a couple of areas. And you need to look at kind of the 4 areas of your credit union that is going to have an impact within the commercial lending environment, right? So you have marketing, you have sales, you have your brand, and then you have the competition, okay? And no, I'm not gonna go through those in order. I'm gonna jump around back and forth because the reality is that's how I traditionally roll if we were in person and I was up on stage. So hopefully we can make this interesting and exciting and everyone walks away with some useful information. So I think the first place to start is actually with the last one that I mentioned, and that's gonna be the competition. So when you are looking at the competitive environment, you're going to have other credit unions and banks that absolutely did an amazing job with PPP. If they did that, you probably want to steer clear of their customers and their members, because they've just really showcased that even in some of the most dire of circumstances, they have their back. And relationship is what truly matters when it comes to your business-to-business relationships in commercial banking. If you're talking interest rates, you're already losing, because if that's your leading point, your people are not building the valuable relationships that a business owner is looking for in their financial institution. So the folks that did a really good job, steer clear. But the competitors that maybe had a hard time with PPP, and everyone had a hard time with it, but there's a difference between having a hard time, getting these applications processed, working with the SBA, working with the government, and not keeping your customers and members well informed during that process. And really that's the key, is that connection and keeping them informed. So if you have competitors that didn't do that, there's a few things that you can do, right? First, take a look at incoming payments to loans that you hold and outgoing payments. That's an area where if you can identify where money is going to and where money is coming from within your commercial accounts, and if you look and you see that XYZ community bank, who on the grapevine didn't do the best job when it comes to the PPP, you can start honing in on them, reaching out to known customers of theirs and opening up that conversation, because this isn't going to be an easy switch. That nothing in business-to-business selling ever is going to come fast. But what you have now are business owners that are receptive to a message for change. And it's really hard to be able to change all of your banking relationships overnight. And the reality is, and I am speaking from the standpoint, I own the agency, so I experience this myself. It takes a lot of pain to get someone to change their financial institution when they're a business. And I touched on marketing and sales in the very beginning, just as one of the 4 points. And marketing and sales always kind of has this friction, especially in a B2B environment, because marketing thinks they know what sales needs, and sales thinks it knows what it wants. And a lot of times when you have that situation, it can be difficult for people to kind of work through that. In my experience, marketing is there to support sales, right? But sales needs to give marketing the runway to support them in the way they think is best. And what do I mean by that? So, controlling the information and how it's presented on, the website or a sales leave behind or anything like that. The content of what's being said, right? And I don't mean the way it's being said, but the actual thinking behind it. Sales should be driving that because they know their customers best. But you need to rely on the folks in marketing to take that information and, well, I think the best way for me to put it is a lot of the times you're taking a simple question and in sales you end up answering it in a very complex way. You need marketing to then take that complex answer and turn it into a somehow complex yet simple answer at the same time. I am way too verbose, and one of the things that I constantly need is someone to pare down my language, take out what is unnecessary and is getting in the way of whoever's reading, or in this case watching, because I'm certainly not going to be editing this video, so that we can get across what it is we're trying to explain. So letting go of that and allowing the group in marketing to help explain that for you is going to be a big plus. And then from marketing's end, a lot of the times folks fall under the pressure of, oh, we got to generate leads, incoming leads. Yes, can that be done? It can be. But the reality is that marketing's first job when it comes to commercial lending is the establishment of the brand. When we talk about brand for a credit union, what are we focusing on when you're looking through the lens of commercial banking? Well, your job is to kick in the door, or maybe not so much kick in the door, but soften it a little for the folks that are doing the outbound calling, doing the connections after hours with lead networks. The more that who your credit union is for is known in the community at large, the easier it's going to be for these commercial sales reps that are trying to go out, trying to build these relationships, trying to draw in deposits and loans, to make that connection with the business owner that's going to say, oh, these guys are for me. And understanding that the credit union is there not just from a multiple common bond standpoint or from an employer bond standpoint. They're there to support you as a business owner. Now, don't get me wrong, of course, business owners are going to be connected with some of the things you're doing in the community. But ultimately, we have to remember that they have a singular, ultimately we have to remember that business owners have kind of a singular goal. In the end, they do need to make a profit, and that is a focal point for them. I think in many cases, and I know perhaps this may be considered sacrilege to say it, credit unions overly focusing on the fact that they're not for profit and that isn't a focus, it hurts them when it comes to business. Because ultimately, as a business owner, that is my goal. Why else am I doing any of this? Of course, I'm trying to establish a lifestyle. If I have employees, I'm charged with making sure that I'm able to pay them fair wages, give them great benefits, have a positive work environment. But if the bottom line is red, I can't do any of that. So focusing in on the needs of those business owners in your outward messaging is key. And how you strike a balance between the generally more community-focused, more member-focused messaging within a credit union, when you compare that to the kind of messaging that is going to resonate with most business owners, that's going to be a challenge, and it's not an easy answer because every single credit union is different. One of the biggest strengths they have is that they're different. When you look at credit unions, it's not enough to just say, hey, we're a credit union, do business with us. There's a lot of messaging out there right now. Some of it might work, that's like that, saying, hey, work with us because we're a credit union, and all of these features of a credit union. But they fail to see the biggest factor that makes a difference in a credit union, and that is who the credit union is for. Your common bond is now your brand. That is the common bond. When you talk about a credit union that no longer has their seg, or the seg has kind of gone to the wayside and they're more focused on a community, honing in on that group of the community that you serve well, and really folding your message around them and making your brand for them, right? That's going to be the thing that allows you to stand out in the cacophony of low interest rates and changes and service differentials and branch closures and branch openings and all the other challenges that are going to continue to, hammer the industry for the foreseeable future. So in this kind of discussion about brand, that area is one that so many credit unions forget the B2B aspect of things. And they think that by going out and, maybe purchasing a community bank or hiring some high-performing sales reps from a competitor, that you're going to be able to just bring on those loans and deposits. But the reality is it's not that simple. And you need to do the hard work of explaining to the business community at large why you're for them. So, in talking about brand, I touched a little bit on organizational changes. Boy, I hope that we keep that in there. So when you look at the organizational changes that you need to put in place from a branding perspective, there's also another big one that gets missed, and that's a really good CRM. And the reason why a really good CRM matters is that a lot of the larger players you're going to be going against have really good customer service. So as a business owner, I call in, no matter who I talk with, they have notes on my account. They have detailed information about the business. They have information about what I've talked with my individual banker about what's going on with my business, what my needs might be. So when I call in and the individual that I work with on a day-to-day basis maybe isn't available, someone else can pick that ball up right away. Because the reality is, business owners don't have time to wait. We need to get the information we're looking for quickly and efficiently so we can move on with our day. And not having a solid CRM in place makes that virtually impossible. So CRM implementation is tough, and it can be expensive, and there's a lot of really challenging options out there. There's one that begins with sales and ends with force. In my opinion, is bloatware. It has far, far more than any credit union would possibly need in the very beginning. And yeah, I get what you're going to say. Well, what about 3 or 5 years down the road when we could utilize a lot of what it has? To be fair, I've not seen really any organization utilize it to its fullest extent. Mostly what they're using it for is as a base level customer relationship manager. That's what they're doing. So focus in on that and understand that do the small things correct. And then over time, you can develop and bring on more challenging software, into the mix, because onboarding something like that requires not just the software itself, but bringing on internal talent to actually help you run that software. So the easier it is to use, the simpler it is to use, the more the folks that are out in the field are actually going to use it. Because if people just ignore it, or even worse, you have to force them to use it, and it doesn't organically roll into their day, What they are going to do is they're going to input the minimum amount of information possible into that CRM. So make sure that the folks that are in the field are involved in this selection process. Ultimately, and I'm talking to everyone in IT and marketing, they're your customer. Everyone that is that is out there in the B2B space selling the credit union to businesses, they're the end user for this CRM. If it's not being rolled out to the consumer-facing side, and if it's rolled out to the consumer-facing side, well, then you have two customers, and you're going to have to balance those needs and hopefully not make one system lean one way or another when you're talking about its implementation, because the needs of a business-to-business, B2B CRM is very different from the needs of a business-to-consumer CRM. So doing your homework along those lines is certainly going to help you to roll that implementation out faster. And there are tons of low-cost options out there. I could rattle off probably 5 or 6 right now. The reality is everyone here is capable of utilizing Google. If you put in a business-to-business CRM into Google, you're going to have a lot of different options. If you're interested in the one that I would suggest, certainly I'm not going to use this format to plug them, even though I use the format to tell you where not to go, but that's okay. So you can reach out. I'm happy to let you know, who I think you can utilize, because the simplicity really is key. So the last component is advertising. Full disclosure, one of the main things we do. But with that comes a lot of insight over the past decade into how credit unions can run their advertising in far more efficient ways. And again, PPP showcases that opportunity almost to its fullest extent. So you can very easily now parse out the data within your core systems, pull that information out about the businesses that you're able to service well, and then build lookalike audiences to target those folks on all forms of social and digital media throughout the World Wide Web. And that component is one that seems to be lost on a lot of credit unions. You don't see a lot of them utilizing advertising to really, in a targeted way, hone in on the different types of businesses that they want to go after. LinkedIn is a great area to utilize to be able to drive folks to lead generation pages. Again, if you put the work and effort into the targeting, because there are literally hundreds of different targeting variables that go into building a proper business-to-business target, because business-to-business targeting is far more difficult than business-to-consumer. And even with business-to-consumer, you're looking at 10, 15, 20 different variables for really even the most simple campaign. When you tack on the challenges that are present in business targeting, everything compounds, because now you have multiple individuals, you might have multiple locations, different business units, you have different decision makers, different influencers within the business. Just off the top of my head, there's 5 different variables that you're then layering in 10 more, so there's 50 that you're now having to consider when you're building out appropriate targeting packages. But the PPP program, when you look at, all right, who came to our page, who went on that, who started investigating PPP pages on our credit union site, great, easy, start retargeting those folks. And not just with messaging that is active, start passively using that channel to get your brand in front of the individuals that were going on the PPP landing page, because the reality is you're not going to get much spillover there from consumers. So you can make the assumption that most of the folks that were visiting that page were likely businesses or decision makers or influencers within those businesses. So now you've been able to capture a group of folks that you can start pushing that messaging out to on a consistent basis, and not just, oh, hey, we have these lower interest rates, or hey, do your business banking with us. You need to really hone in on why I should break my current relationship and move that relationship over to, over to the new credit union. And be wary of the testimonials, because in about, somewhere 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, everyone's going to be flooding out testimonials about, here's what my credit union or my bank did for me, and they're going to plop down a business owner. They're going to talk about the experience, and everyone's going to be pummeling everyone with these kind of testimonial videos. So you're going to have to find a different way of breaking through that messaging, whether you're producing it in an interesting way, presenting it in a different way, or just not even focusing on testimonials, focusing on a different area to kind of drive that interest. So the advertising arm of things is going to be an area where, especially if you're not well known in the business community, you're going to have to pour resources into that in a time when everyone's going to be pulling back. We're going to see marketing budgets get cut, but the reality is, if you want to grow, you really can't do that. And is that statement self-serving because I run an ad agency? Of course it is. But I've not seen someone be able to continually grow their business over the years that isn't some random outlier, that isn't consistently taking a portion of their profit and pouring that back into growing the business and additional customer or member acquisition. If you're not doing that, you're just accepting that business is what it is. And yeah, are you going to grow every couple of years? Are you going to grow with the environment around you? Yeah, sure, you are. But what really defines success, whether you're a credit union, a bank, a small business, is how you're succeeding against yourself and against your peers. If everyone else is growing and you're kind of moving along at the same pace, you really haven't done much. You've gotten lucky, and sure, honestly, I'd rather be lucky than good, but I'd rather be lucky and good. And if you really want to be able to capture the next wave of dissension that's going to come from this mess that PPP created for a lot of business owners, you need to ensure that your brand is top of mind. And the only way you're going to do that is by leveraging highly targeted advertising to connect with the business owners and business influencers, in the community you serve. That's all I got.